Good morning. This is Jimmy. We're back in the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 18. And anyway, yesterday we got up to verse 11. I just want to recap a little bit about what was going on in verse 11. And the soldiers have come to take Jesus. And they're afraid of him, of course. But I've been in a lot of jams. But the first person who moves, then you know there's going to be a fight. If you just stand there may not be a fight. But if somebody jumps or swings or pulls a knife or a gun or charges you, then you know it's just going to be hair, teeth, blood, and eyeballs until it's over. It's instructive to know how Jesus put a stop to this very quick. Peter said that I will follow you to prison, even unto death. I'm not going to let them take you. Yesterday we covered all that. In verse 10, just to bring us back up to pace, it says that Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and smote the high priest's servant, cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. And then said Jesus unto Peter, Put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Just as a point of reference, when Peter cut off the servant of the high priest's ear, Jesus does something. We go back to Luke, the Gospel of Luke, in Luke's account, and it says, and when but Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? And then in verse 49 to 22 of Luke, Luke adds these details about the servant of the high priest. And they says, when they which were about Jesus saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? Now, as I remember, they only had two swords. Because earlier in this chapter, back in verse 35, Jesus said unto them, When I sent you without purse and script and shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said, Nothing. Then said he unto them, But now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his script. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned among the transgressors. For the things concerning me, Jesus said, have an end. And they said, Lord, behold, here are two swords. Two swords. All the temple guards are out there with swords and staves. Here are two swords. I got two bullets, one for you and one for me, one for me and one for thee. And he said unto them, It is enough. Down here, it says, when they were about him, saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? And then in Luke 50, it says, and one of them smote the servant of the high priest. We know from the Gospel of John that it was Simon Peter. It was Simon Peter who struck the servant of the high priest. I'm just looking for one more quick verse here. And Matthew, of course, Mark, of course, records the same thing. And Peter is identified in the John account. John is the one who identifies Peter. But anyway, it says in verse 50, it says that one of them smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. I was just wondering if the guy was left-handed that cut off his ear. I guess he could have done like this, but if he went like that, he would have had to have done it with his left hand. If he did his right hand, he would have drawn all the way across and done like this. Anyway, that's just, who knows? It doesn't tell us. I'm always interested in the stuff that the scriptures don't say. because, you see a whole picture. There's always a lot of stuff going on at one time. I had a phone deal come up. Um, he smote off his right ear, and then Jesus answered and said, "Suffer ye thus far." He's talking to the disciples and said, "Hang on, don't do nothing else." He's also talking. He's also talking to the. He's also talking to the soldiers from the temple. He said, "Hey, lay off. I'll go peacefully." But Jesus touched the ear of Malchus and healed him. That's in verse 51 of Luke's account of this event. Now we get back to chapter 18 of John. And it says, "In the servant's name was Malchus, and then Jesus said unto Peter, Put up thy sword into thy sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it?" Well, there you go. And what brings us up today, John chapter 18. Chapter 18 now. Well, we've made some progress. We're not in 17 anymore. In chapter 18, beginning in verse 12. Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him. They didn't have to bind him. He would have just walked along. I've always, really kind of cringed at this idea of tying up God or putting handcuffs on him. We do all that ourselves when we say, well, God will do this, or he can't do that, or he won't do this. We make God's decisions for him and say they came from God and they came out of our own head. God does what he wants to do, beloved. Then the band of officers and the captain and officers, then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him and led him away to Annas first. Annas was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that year. The high priest family and all his relatives, of course, they were all priests. And he was the high priest that year. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews. Now, when you remember, we've been talking about this for a long time. When he's talking about the Jews, he's not talking about every Jewish person. This is not an anti-Semitic kind of thing. Jesus was and is and will always be a Jew. He is the king of the Jews. He will sit on the throne of his father David and rule with a rod of iron, and the law shall go forth out of Mount Zion. Can I get an amen? It's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. Now, it's talking about the higher-ups. Remember my definition of the higher-ups? That's the scribes, the lawyers, the Pharisees, the priests, the chief priest and his family, the Sadducees, the Herodians, all the publicans, the rich people, the people who collaborated with Rome to the ruination of their own country and people, collaborators with their occupiers. We take a dim view of that nowadays. Just about everybody in France that collaborated with the Nazis wound up at the end of a rope, and God bless them. It's what they deserved. Now, we are back. Chapter 18, verse 14. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel unto the Jews, the higher-ups, the ruling class, that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Now he did this. Let's back up. It's been weeks, months since we've been here. But Jesus, not long after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, there were lots of people believing on Jesus. In verse 45, chapter 11, just to refresh your memory, it says that many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did, which was raising Lazarus from the dead, believed on him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and Pharisees a council and said, What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and our nation. In other words, he's going to ruin the deal we got here. He's talking about peace. We're religion. He's talking about God, but we're religion. See, God hates religion. Religion is always against God. God deals with individual men and women. He doesn't deal with organizations. Now, men and women make up not an organization, but an organism called the church. It's the bride of Christ, and it's a living, breathing thing, and it is not ensconced in stone. It doesn't live there. It lives here. Now, it says one of them being named Caiaphas, this is the guy we're talking about, the high priest, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. We'll let the Romans kill this one guy, and they'll leave the rest of us alone, because this one guy, Jesus, is causing all the trouble. Now, this he spake, not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for the nation. See, he was the high priest, serving in the function of the high priest in the temple. And God gave him a prophecy, which that was his office. And whether he was a good high priest or a bad high priest, God spoke to him and gave him this word, which was true. And not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. See, Jesus said the day will come when they kill you will think they do God service. After he said that Jesus should die for the nation and bring all the children of God together. Then verse 53, right after that, he said, Then from that day forth they took counsel together to put him to death. They must destroy him. Well, you know what? If he's got to die for the people, then let's go ahead and kill him so God's will be done. The high priest said it, so it's a prophecy from God. Let's hurry this thing along. If Jesus is going to die for the people, then let's get on with it. Let's get him dead right now. That's what they were thinking. Caiaphas said that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, so did another disciple, and that disciple was known unto the high priest, went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. Now this was John that followed along. But Peter stood at the door without, and he went out. Then came out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. These fancy houses, they had a courtyard, and then they had open areas where they cooked and slaughtered meat and did work for the great estate, for the great house. And, they did it outside where it was cool and where they didn't have to smell the animal dung inside the house, And so anyway, there were a bunch of people outside, servants and everything. And there was a girl that kept the door, so she let Peter in the gate. If you can remember, and if you come from the Southwest, think of the Mexican haciendas, that would have an outer wall, and then there would be a courtyard, and then there would be a house. There would be a house, the house for the Lord, or the escondado, the hacendado, the guy that ran the ranch, the big chief, the Don, the El Jefe. And then you would have, buildings for the peons and for the serfs, for the people who worked on the land, people who worked for that family. And that's what it was like there at the high priest's house. They had a courtyard. They let Peter in the gate. So he came in. And then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also one of this man's disciples? And he saith, I am not. Remember, Jesus told him, before the cock crows, you're going to deny 3 times that you even know me. A damsel that kept the door said unto Peter, Art not thou one of this man's disciples? And he saith, I am not. Can you dig it, baby? Oh, man, there you go. I'm going to leave it right here because it will take some time to get through the denial of Peter. It is a big deal, Peter's denial of Jesus. So we will attack that tomorrow. God bless you.